August 2022, Washington, D.C. The President of the United States signed a $52 billion emergency bill, not to fight a war, not to respond to a pandemic, not to save a failing bank, to make a chip. A chip so small you could fit 10,000 of them inside the width of a single human hair. A chip you've never thought about. A chip that right now is running the phone in your pocket, the car outside your house, the fighter jets protecting your country, and every single AI system that every major tech company on Earth has staked its future on. And here's the part that should terrify you. 90% of the world's most advanced chips are made in one place, one company, on one island. An island sitting 160 kilometers off the coast of mainland China, a country that has spent the last decade preparing to take it by force. This is the story of TSMC, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why a factory you've never heard of might be the most dangerous flashpoint on the planet. To understand how the world ended up in this position, we need to go back to a decision that seemed completely rational at the time. It's 1985. American companies dominate the global tech industry. Intel, Texas Instruments, Motorola, these are the giants, and they all make chips. But making chips is brutally expensive. Clean rooms, precision equipment, billions in capital, and every few years you have to tear it all down and rebuild from scratch just to keep up with the technology. So the Americans made a logical call. Stop building the factories. Just design the chips. Outsource the messy, expensive, complicated manufacturing to someone else. Wall Street cheered. Costs went down, margins went up, everyone won. Except nobody asked the obvious question. Who exactly was going to build those factories? The answer turned out to be a 54-year-old engineer who had just been passed over for the top job at Texas Instruments and was quietly furious about it. His name was Morris Chang. Morris Chang didn't go looking for revenge. He went home. Home meant Taiwan. And the Taiwanese government had a problem. They desperately wanted a semiconductor industry, but had no idea how to compete with the Americans and Japanese who already owned the market. Then Morris Chang walked in with an idea nobody had ever tried. What if you didn't compete with Intel? What if you became Intel's factory? No products, no designs, no competing with your own customers. Just one mission executed with absolute precision. Make other people's chips better than anyone else on Earth. He called it a pure play foundry. In 1987, with $48 million in government funding, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company opened its doors. Intel's engineers laughed. American executives called it a glorified factory. They had no idea what they just created room for. Because here is what Morris Chang understood that nobody else did. Making chips isn't just manufacturing. It is the hardest manufacturing process in human history. You're drawing circuits onto silicon using beams of light, circuits so precise that the slightest vibration, the smallest temperature change, a single particle of dust destroys everything. Every generation of technology pushes those circuits smaller, and every step smaller requires entirely new physics. The only way to master this is obsession, total, singular, undivided obsession. While Intel split its energy between design, marketing, corporate strategy, and investor calls, TSMC put every dollar, every engineer, every waking hour into one question. How do we make chips better tomorrow than we made them today? By the late 1990s, they weren't just keeping up. In some processes, they were ahead. And then Apple called. Apple was 90 days from bankruptcy. Steve Jobs had just returned. He cut products, cut staff, and made one decision that would reshape the entire technology industry. He wanted chips that nobody else had. Custom silicon designed specifically for Apple devices, made to specs that no off-the-shelf manufacturer could match. There was only one company on Earth that could deliver that: TSMC. What followed was one of the most consequential partnerships in corporate history. Apple designed the chip, TSMC built it. Together, they created the A-series processors that powered the iPhone, the most profitable product in the history of consumer electronics. By 2020, Apple's chips, built exclusively at TSMC, were outperforming processors from companies that had been in the chip business for 50 years. The A14 chip inside the iPhone 12 was manufactured at 5 nanometers. Intel, with all its history and all its resources, was still struggling to consistently hit 10. But Apple wasn't alone. NVIDIA's AI chips, TSMC. Qualcomm's smartphone chips, TSMC. AMD, Broadcom, MediaTek, TSMC. At the bleeding edge of chip technology, the part that matters for AI, defense, and next-generation computing, TSMC's market share wasn't 60%, it wasn't 70%, it was 90%. One company, one island, no backup. Beijing had been watching all of this very carefully. China had brilliant engineers, state-backed companies, hundreds of billions in investment, a genuine ambition to build its own chip industry and stop depending on a factory on an island it considered its own territory. But there was a wall they could not get past: EUV. Extreme UV lithography is the technology that makes chips below 7 nanometers physically possible. Without it, you're locked out of the most advanced manufacturing on Earth. There is no workaround. The physics are absolute, and every EUV machine on the planet is made by one company, a Dutch firm called ASML, based in the small city of Veldhoven. Each machine takes years to build, contains 100,000 individual components, costs $150 million, and ASML makes fewer than 60 per year. In 2019, under pressure from Washington, the Dutch government stopped issuing export licenses for ASML to sell EUV machines to China. No machines, no advanced chips, no catching up. China was locked out, and Beijing knew it, which is when the calculations shifted from buying the technology to taking it. China has claimed Taiwan since 1949. For 75 years, it was mostly a political argument. Important, but not urgent. Then, TSMC happened. Now, Taiwan wasn't just symbolically significant. It was the single most strategically valuable piece of industrial real estate on the planet. A Chinese takeover wouldn't just be a military victory, it would be the largest transfer of technological power in human history. Overnight, Beijing would control 90% of the world's advanced chip manufacturing. Every American missile, every NATO fighter jet, every AI system powering Western military intelligence, all of them dependent on chips that can only be made in Taiwan. The Pentagon wargamed the scenarios. Several of the conclusions remain classified. But then, the equation got even more complicated. November 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT. Within 2 months, 100 million users. The AI gold rush ignited overnight. Every major tech company on Earth, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, suddenly needed massive quantities of the most advanced chips ever made. Not in 5 years, now. And every single one of those chips was made by TSMC. NVIDIA's H100 GPUs, the engine of the AI revolution, manufactured exclusively in Taiwan. Jensen Huang became the most important person in the AI industry, not because of what he designed, but because of who built it. TSMC's revenue hit $69 billion in 2023. Its market cap crossed $500 billion. The company that American executives once called a glorified factory had become, by any serious measure, the most important industrial enterprise on Earth, and the island it sat on had become the most dangerous piece of real estate in the world. So what happens if Taiwan falls? Not a hypothetical. Military planners in Washington, Tokyo, Brussels, and Taipei treat it as a realistic near-term scenario. Chinese warships have been crossing the median line of the Taiwan Strait, the informal boundary both sides had respected for decades. Military exercises around the island have escalated every year. Xi Jinping has said explicitly that reunification is not optional. The economic temptation for Beijing is almost irresistible. Control TSMC and you control AI. You control military technology. You control the next industrial revolution. But here is the twist that nobody in Beijing or Washington can fully resolve. If China invades and the conflict damages TSMC's fabrication plants, even temporarily, it doesn't just hurt the West. it destroys China too. Chinese phone makers, Chinese car manufacturers, Chinese consumer electronics companies all depend on TSMC chips. Destroy the factory, and you collapse the global economy, including your own. It is mutually assured economic destruction, the silicon equivalent of nuclear deterrence, the most fragile piece in the world held together by a factory. Morris Chang, the man who built all of this, said something in 2022 that stopped people cold. Globalization is dead, he said. The age when economics alone determined where things were made, that era is over. Geopolitics is back. He had spent 35 years building TSMC as a neutral factory for the world, a company that served everyone, that transcended politics through sheer economic utility. But the world had other plans. Here is where we land. America spent 40 years offshoring its chip production in the name of efficiency. China spent 40 years trying to build what it couldn't buy. Taiwan spent 40 years quietly becoming the one thing nobody could replace. And the entire world spent 40 years pretending that economics and geopolitics were separate conversations. They were never separate. The semiconductor isn't just a component in your phone. It is the foundational material of modern power. It determines who builds the weapons, who runs the AI, who wins the next war without firing a shot. And right now, 90% of the world's ability to make that material sits on an island 160 kilometers from a country that wants to own it. TSMC didn't create this crisis. It revealed one that was always there. The showdown isn't coming. It's already here.